What brings people into spirituality is often a sort of intuition. Maybe more than intuition, maybe you've had some unexpected moment of some sort of grace when the way you viewed things, the way you viewed the world somehow shifted for a bit, and existence, you looked quite different. Everything looked quite different. Maybe what brought you into spirituality was some such sort of foretaste, some sort of glimpse, or with other people it's simply this intuition, that there is something beyond or other than the way that we've all sort of agreed to perceive things. Because we perceive things to large extent because we're taught to perceive them in a particular way. We're taught to see the world in a particular way, so therefore we see it in a particular way. You're born into a world peopled with people who see the world, see themselves, and see you in a very particular way. In a very sort of fractured, separate way of seeing things, right? Way of perceiving. And so when we're born into this way of seeing things, sooner or later, without even knowing it, we begin to view things the same way. You don't come out of your mother's womb seeing everything as sort of separate and fractured and frightening. This is to a large extent a certain sort of learned behavior, a learned way of perceiving. But what draws people into spirituality is some sort of connection, or as I said, some deep intuition that there's a different way to perceive, that there's something more going on than the exteriors in which we move. Do you know? Because the exteriors in which we move are relatively, there's nice things about them. There's wonderful moments, and there's nice things about the exteriors in which we move. But also, I think that no human beings can actually exist in the world for a long time, especially a human being that has even a shred of intelligence. And by a shred of intelligence, I don't mean great brain power. I mean simply the ability to open your eyes. I don't think that someone can exist in the world for very long without having the ability to perceive. How can you say? How can you put it nicely? How ludicrous we all are. Do you know what I mean? The things that we take as normal, the things that we take as this is the way things are. We take a certain amount of hate and ignorance and greed and violence and hypocrisy. We take a certain amount of that as normal, actually. Do you know, that's the way things are. I mean, to think otherwise would just be to think that you are trapped in some sort of utopian delusion, do you know? So we take this as sort of normal, so normal that after a while it doesn't even cause much of a blip in your radar screen, Gross amounts of violence or hate or conflict, they get our attention. We read them in the newspapers, or we may witness them, we may have been subject to them, and they get our attention. But the normal amount, just the sort of common amount of conflict, of greed, of violence, of hypocrisy, is something that just sort of is taken to be the norm. Do you know what I mean? It's very simple. It's sort of taken to be the norm. And I think there's a sort of an intuition in almost many human beings, certainly, that that normal amount of idiocy, actually, that the normal amount of idiocy, the normal amount of hypocrisy and greed and violence and all that, that there's an intuition that that's not all there is to life. That's not actually normal. That's actually profoundly abnormal. Do you know? And you look in our world and you see, don't get me wrong, there's beautiful things about our existence and human beings, and even when we're deeply, deeply enmeshed in the dream state, you can have some really great experiences when you're very deluded. Do you know? So it doesn't mean that there's not tremendous amounts of beauty and pleasure in the world as it is, do you know, as sort of dysfunctional as it is. And I suppose it's this sort of, the fact that because there is some pleasure in it, because there is some beauty in it, because there is still some love that shines through, and there is still some amazing moments of compassion and beauty that shines through, I imagine that in some way, because that's there, it actually helps us to go in some manner to sleep, to the dream state that we're existing in, do you know? Because the dream state that we tend to exist in, that we've all sort of agreed is normal, you know, of separation, and where we each have our own sort of individual belief structure, worldview, religious opinion, do you know? And we all have this, and it's very sort of identified, and it's mine, what I think, what I believe, the way things should be, and everybody's is a little bit different, you know? And we think that everybody having a little bit different sort of belief structure, idea, whatever it may be, is normal. But there is an intuition in most human beings that they often rarely allow themselves to experience, that there's something other than all that. Not that one can attain, not in some other world, hopefully, because if you start having fantasies about some other world, then we're actually lost in a deeper deluded state than we imagine. But in existence here and now, in this world, in you, that there actually is a deep sanity, a deep peace, a deep love, a deep compassion. There is the intuition that there is a profound freedom that is in the very heart of existence.